Okay, good morning, good day, wherever you are. Hayom Yom, 11 Sivan. Yeah, from my father's talks, the Rabbi Rashab speaking about, the Frierdiker Rebbe speaking about the Rabbi Rashab. My father's talks. So the Rabbi Rashab said that the avodah of serving God, according to Hasidus, how to serve God according to Hasidus, comprises all kinds of levels. The level of, quote, corpse does not need much elaboration, right? But thank God there is also revival of the dead. So corpse is serving God with, obviously, with coldness, but that can be changed. A corpse is cold. There's nothing as frigid as natural intellect, human intellect. There's a thought, right? Human intellect, for all of the gift that it is by nature cold. And analytical, we could use that word in English. Analytical, you just give me the facts and nothing but the facts. When one's natural intelligence comprehends a godly concept, and the emotions latent in intellect are enthused and moved by the pleasure within intellect, that is true revival of the dead. So this is important to know that, we've come from Sfiras HaOyma, where we've been living every day with the notion of what we call inter-inclusion, how each of the midos includes all the others. Well, this is true also of Chabad, 10 times 10, meaning that there is what's called, if you look at the Hebrew over here, there's the midos shebaseichel, the midos as they are in seichel. So seichel per se is cold, but seichel can be warmed because of the fact that Hashem it makes everything, that everything inter-includes everything else. It's like a fractal. No matter, even though you're looking at a single point, everything is included there. And therefore, we have the ability to arouse the pleasure, and this is his words, not in English, pleasure within intellect. And when the pleasure within intellect is aroused, this is the true Chiyas HaMesim, the true revival of the dead. All right? Okay? Okay. Lessons in Tanya, page, 853. So we are in the middle of a discussion for which the Rebbe is going to give us a classic metaphor, classic meaning that it's all over Hasidus, for the concept that we described yesterday, which is, if you haven't heard it, so for the first time, you'll hear this, that everything which has what we call in Hebrew amatzias, an existence, has a state of existence before it became a tangible existence. And what we mean by that is that when it comes to God and his relationship to the creation, throughout Tanya and throughout Hasidus and throughout Chumash, we use the metaphor of speech. Pasukim say, Vayemer Vayehi. He spoke, he said, and it was. He speaks the world into existence. And the beginning of Shar Yichud V'Emunah is based on the notion that Hashem speaks in things into existence from the pasuk in Tillim. La'olam Hashem, forever God, Devorcha, your word, Nitza b'Shamayim, stands in the heavens, right? And the Baal Shem Tov, and on forward from all the other Hasidim, darshan from this, if Hashem weren't continually speaking, so to speak, the world into existence, the world would revert to the state that it was before he, quote, opened up his mouth. And that's the state of which we call ayin, where everything is subsumed in God's essence before, or at a deeper level than when it comes to more superficial levels of God, more external levels of God, where they become tangible realities, right? And the statement that he made yesterday, which he's going to explain today, is that if we were to see or live or have presence in that level of God, which is called the ayin, then by definition, everything would disappear in relation to in relation to the way it exists today. This glass case seems to be my favorite prop. I don't know why. This glass case, real glass case, is being breathed into existence constantly, or spoken into existence constantly. That gives it ultimately its material presence. But this material presence at the same time is always connected with God himself, who is constantly speaking, blowing, illuminating from his deep internality inside. And if this glass case were to go back to that state, it would no longer be a glass case. It will be, in my mashal yesterday, it would be like sugar dissolved in a solution, or as he's going to explain today, this mashal of light of the sun within the sun. And that's the mashal that we're going to explore today. Yes, this is in the classic Tanya page, Ayin Ches, opposite page 154. Kind of smack a little below the middle of the page. The hamashal lezeh. I'm starting now inside this metaphor. Metaphor for this, that the tangible existence loses its tangibility as it recedes or goes back to its state of origin in the ayin, the deeper levels of godliness before he speaks, or whatever other metaphor you're going to use. In this case, we're going to use the metaphor of the shining of the sun. The metaphor for this is the light of the sun, the Or HaShemesh, Hameir La'oretz V'Ladorim, which shines down to the earth and those who dwell upon it, i.e. us. This light of the sun is only a ray, Shehu Ziv, it's a ray, Ve'or, it's a ray and a light, Hamispashit Miguf HaShemesh, which it flows out from the body of the sun. So the sun is the source of light, as God is the source of everything. And what all of reality, which unfolds from that source, from Atzilus and on down, is like just a ray coming out of that source, which flows from the Guf HaShemesh, from the body of the sun. V'nir la'ayin kol. And there, when it comes out from the body of the sun, we see the light as it has traveled from 93 million miles away. We see the light down here on planet Earth. V'nir la'ayin kol meir ala oretz. We see that it's illuminating on the earth. U'b'cholol ha'olam, and the cholol ha'olam, and then in the empty space it travels through. V'hinei zeh pashut. So the following should be simple to understand. She'or v'ziv hazeh, that this light and this ray, yesh negamkin beguf v'chemer kader hashemesh, exists also in the sun, right? The sun is the source of it. There is no ray, there is no light without it beaming from the sun. So this light, yes, is in the body and the physicality of the globe of the sun. It's Atzma itself, Shebeshemayim, in heaven. Because if it's able to spread out, be diffused and shine to such a distance, so much more so, that it's able to shine in its source, mamish. It's just that rak there, sheshom, in the source, in its place, mamish nechshav haziv hazel ayin ve'efes mamish. This ray is considered like absolutely nothing. There are no rays in the sun. There's just a bubbling mass of heat and like fire. And I guess we could use that as an example also. The difference between the source of a fire, you're sitting by a campfire and let's imagine you're in the fire, right? Well, it's hot, right? And it's flaming, but you don't have the experience that you do from someone away from the fire who's lost in the woods and sees a ray of light coming from some place. So that's not the experience that's in the sun. That's the experience that we have away from the sun. The light is shining and illuminating to some other place. Because in the sun, the source of everything, ki botol mamish, that ray, the ray of light, the ziv, that's the word in Hebrew, is botol b'metzias. It has no tangible existence. Its existence is nullified, the ray of light. It's nullified in existence, lagabe guf kader hashemish, in relation to the body of the globe of the sun. The body of the globe of the sun is a globe of one flaming fire, not rays that are being illuminated. You have to stand back, go back 93 million miles away, or other places in space closer to the sun where there'll be an illumination, light that shines on the moon and other planets. So, but not in the body of the sun. Shehu makahor, which even though, but in the body of the sun, that is the source of it all, right? That's the source of the light, the haziv, hazeh, and this ray. Shaziva or hazeh, because this light and this ray, is only a ray which shines out from the body and the essence, or the center of the globe of the sun, from the essential sun. It's just that in the empty space of the world, throughout space, Tachas kol hashemayim, which is under all the heavens, where here we have the heavens and being the firmament, the levels. I mean, we're familiar, I think, with this idea that from essence of God, the essence of God is the source of everything, and in a stepwise way, which we call seder hestalshlus, one degree of lowering after another, or one degree of expressing after another. Another metaphor that's used from this is the source of thought which is called intellect, gives rise to an expression which is called thought, and the thought gives rise to speech. The speech is an outcome from previous layers, right? So there's an essence of God, and then there are the spiritual levels that are emitted from them, and then ultimately there's the physical olam hazeh hagashmi, one layer of descent after another, one level of contraction after another, one level of revelation. The revelation of the physicality exists only down here where we live in this physical world. If we were to reverse the process and go up and up and up, we would dissolve into first spirit and then back into the essence of God himself, which here in our analogy is like dissolving into the essence of the sun itself. The ray is only tachas kol hashemayim. It's only underneath all that. It's below. V'ala ores, and on this earth or some other planet. She'ein kan guf kader hashemish. Because in this planet or any other physical body which is getting the ray, you get the ray, but you don't get the sun itself. The body of the sun itself, the globe of the sun, is not here in its metzias. Something from its metzias, something from its existence is coming out. But that the sun itself is not nirakan, is not visible here. I mean, we can look at it, but it means the sun as it is, as if we were in the sun. We don't have that experience. So here we only have the or and the ziv. And that becomes l'yesh mamish, l'ayin kol. That's what we see, that's what we experience, that's the yesh, that's the substantiality that we have the sun. We have the rays of light down here. Shosham yesh be'emes. Nevertheless, we know that light itself does exist there in the sun, but not in the same quality that it exists down here. As he said, Masha Enken, turn the page 156, when that light, when that light is in its source, beguf hashemish, in the body of the sun, ein neifel shem yesh klau. We don't call it something at all. We don't call it a ray. It has no name at all. It's the sun. It isn't the light source. I mean, it is the light source, but it's not experienced as light source. It's experienced as hot, bubbling fire. Rakshum over there, no. Its name over there is that it's ayin b'efes. That ray of the sun over there has a name. What do we call it? When that ray is in the sun, it's called ayin b'efes. It's called absolutely nothing. From the perspective of its ability to illuminate things and cause plants to grow, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, that's pretty interesting in itself. That the light carries with it an energetic which allows for the process of photosynthesis down here below, and which was totally, of course, necessary to the growth of all the vegetative kingdom. The vegetative, if that were in the sun, there's no vegetative kingdom in the sun. There's no process of photo. That's all when the light becomes distanced so to speak, from the sun. There, all the vegetative kingdom, the whole process of photosynthesis, etc., is absolutely nothing, doesn't exist, even though the source of it is there. It's absolutely nothing. Kibaemis, Husham, truthfully, the light is there, but there is in a state of ayin ve'efes mamish. It's absolutely nothing. She'ein me'er sham. It doesn't shine there. There's no shining light over there. Rak makoyre levade. What is over there is just the source of the shining, beaming light. Shehu guf hashemesh, which is the body of the sun, a me'er which shines. The efes biladoi, and speaking of the sun as the metaphor for God himself, there really is there, over there in the sun, there's nothing but the sun. It's like, in essence, and when in God's inside godliness that is essential, there's nothing beside him. Now we're going to understand, and maybe already thinking in your mind, truthfully, there's nothing but God everywhere. And he'll explain this, and he'll at the end of this that we're going to learn today, we'll get a little drop of understanding that, because God is everywhere. The sun is not everywhere, but stay with the mushal. The light of the sun is only down here. The source of the sun, there's no light out there illuminating photosyntheticable, quality up there in the sun at all. That dissolves into the ayin of the sun itself. So that's the mushal. And now a bit on the nimshal, comparing this to Hashem and his relationship to the rest of reality. According to these words, mamish, b'demusam b'tzalmum, using them as an image, a metaphor, hem kol habirudim, are all the creatures, everything that's created from all the worlds, lagabe shefa elokim miruat piv, in relation to the flow of godliness from the so-called breath of his mouth, hashafea alehem, which flows to them, umahava oisam, and brings them into being, v'huma koiram, and this is their source. The godly, God speak, is the source of everything that exists, from Atzilus on down. But this has a source, which is God himself, v'huma koiram, which is the source. V'hem atzam eno rak kamei ora b'ziv mispashit min hashefa, and all of the reality which comes from that source is only like the ray, the ziv, the ray of light, which flows from that ruach Hashem, from the spirit of Hashem. Excuse me. This ray of light comes from the flow and the ruach Hashem, the spirit, the breath of Hashem, Hashefeir, which flows, and is clothed within them, and brings them forth. This word Metziyim, it brings them forth from one state to another state, from a state of ayin to a state of yesh. And therefore, everything is nullified, will disappear, will be swallowed back in, whatever words you want to use, into its source. That's the fact. Is just like the light of the sun, which becomes the ray, the light of the sun, which becomes batal in it, nullified in its existence. And it's considered like absolutely nothing mamish. And it's klal, and it's not called something, quote something. We don't call it something at all. When it's in its source, it's only rak takas shamayim, literally underneath the heaven, as the godly energetic emanates more and more from one level of in the chain to a lower level in the chain. That's takas shamayim. It's only as that occurs, she'ein shamakoyre, where there the source is not there, like the back on mushal to the sun. When it leaves the sun, then it takes on a quality as it passes through the atmosphere of usable light. So kach kol habirur. So here's the metaphor. So similarly, just like the light of the sun when it leaves the sun. So all creatures, ein nofel alehem shem yesh klal. We don't call them something, like we don't call the ray of the sun a ray. We don't call them something. Ela la'ene basar shalanu, only according to our fleshly eyes. She'ein anu ro'im, because we don't see umasigim, and we don't grasp klal at all, as ha'makar, the source. Shehu ruach Hashem hamahava oisim. We don't have the sun down here below. The sun is up there. And similarly, essence of Hashem is metaphorically distant from our ability to perceive. Metaphorically distant from our ability to perceive. And therefore, according to our physical eyes, the eyes of creatures who are physical and coarse, and we have physical, corporeal mamashis, substantiality, shehem yesh gomer, which is a complete yesh, or Hashem. So we're like the light of the sun when it's away from the sun. That's when the light of the sun becomes a light, a ray, and that's when we become a yesh gomer, something completely stuff, that we're stuff. This glass case is stuff when it's in the form of something which is far away, at least appears to be far away from the source itself. And it only gets that form when it's not in its source. Now we have a little very totally important punchline for today's Tanya, which is this mashal is not 100% accurate, like any mashal, because in this we've been describing for the last 20 minutes, how the light is only a light when it's far away from the sun. You can't say that about Hashem, because the mashal, the metaphor we've been given, is not comparable to the source, to the nimshal. The analogy is not comparable to the analog, Lagamri, completely. Because Shiba Mashal, in the metaphor that we've been giving, Ein ha-marka b'metzias klal. The source has no existence b'chol ha'olam through the expanse of space and down here below. The sun is up there; it's not down here. Bala Ora, it says, and doesn't have any existence b'chol ha'olam in the space of the world, the ala oretz, and on the earth, shenira sham ore, where its light appears, liyesh gomer, as a complete substantial thing. The sun isn't here. Masha'in came, on the other stand, not like that. And this is the underline. Kol habirurim, all creations, all creatures, anything from Atzilus on down, even though technically we don't call them creatures until Bria, that's the word of creation. All emanations, all creations, everything that exists is heim b'mekodim tomid, is always in its source. Hashem is everywhere, not like the sun over there and its ray down here. So everything that exists, heim b'mekodim tomid, are in their source continually. It's just that source does not appear to our eyes. Now he's going to end this with a question, which is going to leave us hanging, a cliffhanger, which for tomorrow. And why not? Why, if God is here, right? And Moshe will say, if the sun came down here, what would happen? It would burn up everything. Nothing could exist. So if God is here, lama ein b'telim ha'metzias. Why aren't we totally nullified, swallowed up in our existence, l'makodim, in relation to our source, back into our source? So he says, lahaven zeh, to understand this, sorak lahaktim. We're going to have a preface, which will be the beginning of the next chapter. So a powerful question, right? I mean, we spent how many? Almost 2 pages giving this mashal, and then we end by saying, but God's relationship to reality is not like the sun and the earth, because God is here, the source is here. It's just we can't see it. All right, that is today's Holy Tanya. What do we have from this? What don't we have from this? What questions do we have? Yes. Rivka, you have a question?
Yes.
Yep.
Hi. this, I'm not reading ahead, but I'm going backwards because I had that question about the otiot and we discussed it privately. But
The osios, the letters,
Right.
rooted in Atmos. Yeah.
right, so when so when we're right, we found various sources that talk about that.
Well, also,
That-
you were good enough to find me the source in Tanya. Thank you very much.
No, it's a mimer. Tanya.
Yeah,
too?
no. The mimer has the footnote. I'm sorry for the
Oh,
side.
okay.
The footnote in the mimer tells me, answers my, where is it in Tanya? It's in the Geras
Oh.
HaKodesh,
Okay.
in the later part of Tanya. But in any
Okay.
case, go ahead.
So, so because my question was, okay, there's all this Seder Histalshalis and creation, but and it's dependent upon the letters, the alphabet, the simplicity of it. And my question a few classes ago had to do with, well, so where do the letters come from? And then we discovered this sources that say the letters are etzem elokus. They're
They're
the
not, they're in the essence.
They are the
yes.
source.
They're like the
So-
light of the sun within the sun.
So when we're talking about Hashem being here and we're talking about the letters of creation, I mean, that's a presence of the essence.
But we don't see the letters. do
No,
we?
but we see the results of the
We
letters.
see the result. That's the light of the sun, where we see the ray. We know the ray is coming from the sun, but we don't see the way it is in the sun. Right.
But
Exact
it's the
parallel.
source, but it's identical. It's and
I don't know
that was
what's your
what was
question.
very beautiful in the mimer that says the most the closest way to connect to the source is just learning Aleph Bet, in a way that the learning of the Aleph Bet is the purest kind of learning, because then we're connecting to that
You're touching the letters.
essential
Right.
power of Hashem.
Right.
Just tonight, just tonight. Oh, I just wanted to
Oh,
answer my own question.
okay, fine. I mean, since you mentioned, I mean, it's worth mentioning. You probably have known, not just you, but others as well, the rather well-known story amongst Hasidim about the Alter Rebbe hiring a teacher for his son who would become the Middle Rebbe to teach him the letters. If you know, the story goes, I'll be short, that he hired a teacher to teach him, you know, at that stage of life, Aleph Beis, like everybody in the Middle East can learn Aleph Beis. But he told him how he wanted him to teach him. That if you look at a letter Aleph, it's in 3 sections: a point above, a diagonal line, and a point below. And there are at least 2 ways that this story has come to us in terms of what the Alter Rebbe said. The Yud above, that point above, that's Hashem. And of course, we know in Chassidus it's elaborated even further if the Yud has a little hook in it. So the Yud is already a big deal, the center of it. There's a deeper point from which it comes, which is the hook. I want you to teach him that everything comes from that singular point, and it's visible in the letter Aleph itself, which is this long diagonal, which is the whole Seder Histalshalis. That's the long diagonal of the letter Aleph. And the bottom Yud is the Yidden. Yud, that's why we're called Yidden. Yud, the Jewish people. So the essence of God through Seder Histalshalis zooms down. I mean, that's just the way like a slide, right? The diagonal, and it's invested in the Jewish people. It's actually invested in everything. So the letters are when you learn Aleph Beis that way, you're learning Hasidus. You're learning the deepest, how Atzmus is connected with external reality. But back to our point, you don't see Atzmus down here below. Though the fact is that fact that I just mentioned, you see a yesh, you don't see the ayin. And the question he's leaving us with is, why is that? If he's here, unlike the sun, which is not here, why isn't everything nullified? What goes on so that things are not batal b'metzias? Logically, if the sun were here, we would all burn up. If Etzem were here, we should all be nullified in our source. Question mark, why not? That's where we're holding. So knowing that, ubechein, so what? And
Well,
I'm
I
not
don't
gonna.
I don't have a opinion, but I had another thought while we were learning this today. First of all, this is like very awesome, but it's also very joyful, because what a chesed and a kindness of God, that He allows us to live this like amazing life where we actually experience very nature love, or you really love photosynthesis or anything else that's, a multitude of details in creation, that Hashem in His kindness allows us to live in just the ray of light. It's so beautiful. It's
Yeah,
so
that is a bechein.
it's like really amazing. And then when you suddenly get to the end and the Alter Rebbe says, oh, but guess what? It's not like the sun. Hashem is actually in all those details and essence. Well, that's like, I guess you could say mind blowing. You can't really grasp. But,
Well, it is,
but
right.
It's Baruch Hashem.
Baruch Hashem. That's a pretty big bechein. You go walk around with that consciousness. Amazing. Other people? Elisheva Kirschenbaum. Go ahead.
Yeah, I like that ubechein, and I think that if we are able to nullify ourselves, not in the classic sense where throughout Gullus we're like, oh, nullify yourself,
Right.
but in more like letting Hashem take the lead, letting Hashem, like being aware that Hashem is right here inside of us, and that not worrying, like worrying less today. Maybe today we can worry less
That's
because
good.
we know that Hashem is right here permeating us, and we don't have to try too hard because Hashem's got it.
That's great. That, by the way, that is the whole subject of Shar HaBatachin, which many of us are reading. That is the core principle on which Batachin really exists, that there's nothing to worry about, no matter what's happened, because Atzmus Ein Sof is really here all the time, managing everything, just the way He wants it's supposed to be managed, which is great. Yeah.
Mhm.
Oh, by the way, also maybe a little spinning on what you said, that he said here, we don't have fleshly eyes to see Hashem's presence here, but we do have eyes to see. Otherwise, the Rebbe wouldn't have been telling us for so many years, open up your eyes. And it's actually hinted at in the Hayom Yom, Midos Shabaseichel. There are, Seichel on its own is dry, right? Cold. But the human has been built so that the dryness of seichel can be moisturized and softened and become tasty and tangible through the integration of the midos. Similarly, Atzmus Ein Sof is, I won't want to use the word discernible because that would imply something physical, but it's something we can realize, we can make real in our lives, the presence of Atmas. That's a gift that Hashem has given us, that we can have a state of being, not necessarily mind only, but a state of being where the sun and the presence of the sun, God Himself, is operating and useful and energizing, our being. And that's a way, not the only way, but certainly a way of understanding what it means to open up your eyes, to be able to see with your inner eye, your soulful eye, the presence of Atzmus itself in everything. Any questions here before we go? All right, then have an Atzmistic a day.
Thank you
See you. Bye-bye.
very much.